A young person moved quietly through the trash in the darkest part of Station Vex 7, where broken pipes leaked poisonous water and flickering lights barely cut through the shadows. Kale was 19 years old, but his life had been very different from what most 19-year-olds went through. He wasn't all human, but he wasn't all alien either. The galaxy had decided that he shouldn't exist at all. Kale's skin was covered in emerald green scales that sparkled a little even in the dark. His eyes were golden with vertical slits, like those of a reptile, and when he opened his mouth, rows of sharp teeth showed. He was a mix of human and draconite, a type of strong reptilian warrior from the outer rim of the galaxy. But being different didn't make him special. People hated him for it. The same horrible routine happened every day. Kale would wait until the main hallways of the station were empty before going out to look for food. He mostly ate from the trash cans behind the food courts. He would go through trash cans looking for food that other people had thrown away. He would sometimes find protein bars that were only half-eaten or fruit that had gone bad. On bad days he didn't find anything at all. The people who lived at the station made it very clear that he wasn't welcome. People would turn away or cross to the other side of the hallway as soon as they saw him. Moms would pull their kids closer and whisper warnings. As soon as shop owners saw his reflection in their windows, they would lock the doors. Some of the younger aliens who learned to hate from their parents would throw rocks or pieces of metal at him and yell insults. Kale knew not to fight back. When you fought back, things got worse. The station's security would show up, and they would always side with the full-blooded aliens. They thought Kale was an abomination, a mistake that should never have been born. So he ran, always ran, disappearing into the maintenance tunnels and ventilation shafts that crisscrossed the station like a secret network that only he knew about. The Galactic Council called the genetic experiment he was part of 19 years ago illegal. His mother was a brilliant and curious human scientist named Dr. Victoria Kane who always pushed the limits of what was possible. Drax, a draconite warrior, was his father. He had been sent to Earth as part of a diplomatic mission. They had fallen in love, which crossed the strict lines the galaxy had drawn between different species. When Victoria got pregnant with Kale, they knew they had broken one of the Council's most important rules. Mixing species was not allowed because it was thought to be dangerous and unpredictable. They tried to hide and run to the outer colonies, where the Council's power wasn't as strong. But the Council's agents did find them in the end. They always did. Kale had no memory of his parents. The Council found them when he was only a few months old. He learned what he knew from old data files he had been able to get to years ago. These files told the story of his parents' trial and execution. The records were cold and clinical, saying that his mother and father were criminals who had put the genetic purity of their own species at risk. Death was the punishment for their crime. But in a way, Kale had been saved. The Council had talked about what to do with him. Some people said he should be killed too as proof of an illegal union. Some people said he could be studied to learn more about the risks of hybrid genetics. They finally chose a harsher option. They said he was a legal non-entity, which means he had no rights, no citizenship, and no place in any society. They left him on Station Vex 7 with a note in the galactic database that told everyone what he was. Growing up was a nightmare of being alone and having to survive. He couldn't get into any of the station orphanages. He couldn't get into school. He didn't have any ID, wasn't legally in the country, and couldn't get a real job. He lived in the shadows, learning how to steal when he needed to, how to hide, and how to deal with being turned down all the time. At night, when the station's fake lights dimmed to make it look like it was dark, Kale would lie in his hiding place inside a big ventilation shaft that he had claimed as his own. He had brought in old blankets and cushions that other people had thrown away and made a small nest for himself to sleep in. The metal walls were cold and the sound of air rushing through the vents never stopped. But it was the only place he felt safe. Kale would look at his scaled hands and think about how cruelly random life is during these quiet times. He didn't choose to be born. He didn't want human and draconite blood to mix in his veins. He hadn't done anything wrong other than being alive. But the galaxy had decided he was guilty from the moment he was born. There were times when he could feel both sides of his heritage fighting in him. The human part wanted to feel like they belonged, were part of a community, and were connected to others. It made him want to connect with other people to show them that he was more than what they thought. The draconite part was more aggressive, full of warrior pride and the will to live. It helped him deal with the hate and gave him strength when he wanted to give up. But most of the time, Kale just felt lonely. All alone in a galaxy that had looked at him and decided he didn't deserve to be there. He was alone, with no one to turn to and no hope that things would ever get better. He thought he would spend his whole life this way, in the dark, alone and unloved, until one day he would just stop living and no one would notice or care. He had no idea that everything was about to change. It was a boring morning on Station Vex 7 just like any other. Kale had been hiding in his usual spot all night, in the ventilation shaft on level 3. He woke up to the sounds of the station coming to life. Merchants opening their shops, transport shuttles coming and going, and the constant hum of machinery that kept the huge structure running in the cold vacuum of space. Kale was going over his usual plan, waiting for the right time to sneak out and look for breakfast in the trash, when everything changed all of a sudden. An awful alarm rang through every hallway of the station. Red emergency lights started to flash quickly one after the other. The noise was so loud that it hurt Kale's sensitive hearing and echoed off the metal walls. He pressed himself against the wall of the place where he was hiding, his heart racing. When the station alarms went off, it meant only one thing: danger. Dangerous. He could see people running in fear below him through the grate in the wall. As they ran toward the emergency evacuation pods, their faces showed pure fear. After that, he heard the blast. The metal structure groaned and shook when 3 loud booms shook the whole station. The ceiling dropped dust and debris. Kale watched from his hiding place as armed people started to fill the hallways. They had black armor with strange symbols on it and weapons that glowed with a creepy blue light. Pirates. Xyrillian pirates to be exact. They are some of the most ruthless raiders in this part of the galaxy. The pirates moved through the station like a deadly swarm, breaking down doors and pulling people out of their hiding places. They were looking for valuables, technology, and anything else they could steal and sell on the black market. But they were also taking prisoners, people they could either sell as slaves to mining colonies on the outer rim or ransom back to their families. Kale knew he needed to stay out of sight. This wasn't his battle. The people who were running and screaming had never been nice to him before. They threw rocks at him, called him a monster, and treated him like trash. Why should he put his life on the line for them? His draconite instincts told him to stay hidden, stay alive, and let the chaos pass him by. He watched through the grate as the pirates pushed groups of scared aliens toward the main docking bay. Then something got his attention. There was a different group of people being pulled through the hallway below him. There were 3 people and they were all human. They didn't look like the rough traders and smugglers who usually came through the station. There was a woman with dark hair pulled back into a useful ponytail. She was probably in her late 30s. She wore a gray uniform with scientific symbols on the shoulder. A tall man with short brown hair stood next to her. He was clearly trying to protect the woman and the little girl who was holding onto his leg. The kid couldn't have been older than 7. She had blonde pigtails and big blue eyes that were full of fear. 4 Xyrillian pirates surrounded them, guns aimed right at the man's chest. One of the pirates, who was bigger than the others and had scars all over his face, was yelling at them in broken Standard Galactic. "You die if you move. If you run, you die. You are worth money, so you come quietly or you die painfully." The little girl was crying, soft, desperate sobs that made Kale's chest feel tight in a way that was new to him. The woman was trying to stay calm by whispering calming words to the child. The man kept his hands up to show that he wasn't a threat. Kale should have turned away. He should have stayed out of sight. Yes, these were people, but they were still strangers. They would probably be afraid of him like everyone else was. He had to stay hidden and not call attention to himself in order to stay alive. His brain was telling him to stay still and quiet in every way that made sense. But then the girl looked up. For a second, her scared eyes seemed to be looking right at the ventilation grate where Kale was hiding. She was crying and shaking with fear. At that moment, something inside Kale broke. Or maybe something woke up. His human side took over, pushing aside his cautious draconite instincts. He remembered being scared when he was young, crying alone with no one to help him, and feeling completely helpless. He couldn't let that happen to this kid. He wouldn't. Kale's hands moved before his mind was made up. He used the strength that came from his draconite heritage to pull the ventilation grate free from its mountings. It didn't take much effort for the metal to bend and break. The pirates below were surprised by the sudden noise. They must have been shocked by what they saw falling from the ceiling. Someone who was not quite human and not quite alien landed in a crouch between them and their prisoners. Kale's golden eyes shone in the emergency lights, and his scales reflected the red warning lights. When he bared his teeth in a threatening way, the sharp fangs were easy to see. Everyone stopped for a second. At that moment of mutual surprise, the pirates, the human family, and even Kale himself all seemed to be frozen. Then one of the pirates shot his gun. Kale moved so quickly that he was shocked himself. His draconite reflexes kicked in and he avoided the energy blast. He felt the heat as it passed just inches from his face. He lunged forward and closed the gap between him and the nearest pirate in a flash. His scaled fist hit the pirate's jaw, and the alien fell to the ground right away. The other 3 pirates acted quickly, but Kale was already on his way. He had benefits that pure humans or pure Draconites didn't have because he was a mix of the two. He was as strong and skilled in combat as a Draconite warrior, but he also had the strategic thinking and flexibility of a human. It was a terrible mix. He ducked under another blast of energy and knocked the second pirate's legs out from under him. Kale grabbed the alien's weapon and hit the third pirate in the head with it as the first one fell. The scarred leader of the fourth pirate pulled out a knife and ran at them. Kale caught the knife with his bare hand. His scales were tough enough to keep the edge from cutting through, and his grip was strong enough to keep it still. Kale twisted the blade free and threw it away. The pirate's eyes grew wide with fear. Then he hit the leader so hard that he fell unconscious. The whole fight lasted less than 30 seconds. Kale stood over the 4 armed pirates who were lying still on the floor. He was breathing hard and his heart was racing with adrenaline. He slowly turned to look at the family. They were up against the wall, looking at him with big eyes. The woman had pulled the girl close to her to protect her. Even though he didn't have a weapon, the man stood in front of both of them. Kale thought their faces would show fear and disgust. He always saw that. But as he caught his breath and looked at them, he saw that their faces were different. They didn't look at him like he was a monster. They stared at him as if he had just saved their lives. The quiet lasted for a long time. Kale didn't know what to say. He had never been a hero in the past. He had never kept anyone safe. The moment was strange and new. In the end, he did what he always did. He ran away and disappeared into the shadows before they could say thank you or turn him down. He didn't want to know which one it would be. Things had finally calmed down on Station Vex 7. After a brutal firefight that lasted almost 3 hours, the station's security forces were able to drive off the last of the Xyrillian pirates. Now, emergency workers were going through the damaged areas, helping people who were hurt and figuring out how bad the damage was. The smell of burned metal and gunfire was still in the air, and some hallways were still closed off because of damage to the building's structure. As soon as the fighting got worse, Kale had gone deep into his network of secret passages. He had climbed through maintenance shafts and crawled through old tunnels until he found the safest place to hide. A small, empty storage room on level 5 that most people didn't even know was there. He had curled up in the corner and his body was still shaking from the fight. He kept thinking about those times over and over. The way he fell from the air duct. The pirates' faces were shocked. The sounds of fighting. And most of all, the look of fear in that little girl's eyes as she looked up at him. He had really helped someone. For the first time in his sad life, he had done something that made a difference. But the heavy feeling of being alone came back quickly. Those people probably didn't even remember what he looked like. They were definitely gone now, having been taken off the station with the other traumatized visitors. It had only been a short time when he felt like he had a reason to live. The same routine of hiding, scavenging, and staying alive would start again tomorrow. Kale was just starting to fall asleep when he heard something that made him wake up right away. People talking. Voices of people. They were yelling and looking for something. Looking for someone. Hello? Are you there? Please, we need to find you. There was a woman's voice, clear and strong, echoing through the maintenance halls. Kale's heart began to race. Who would want to find him? Sometimes station security sent patrols through these areas, but they never called out in a nice way. If they found him, they would just pull him out. He pushed himself harder against the wall, trying to make himself as small and hard to see as possible. His scales helped him hide in the shadows, which had saved him many times before. He took control of his breathing and made it slow and quiet. The woman's voice got closer and said, "I know you're here somewhere. We've been looking for hours. Please come out. We just want to talk to you." A deeper male voice joined in. "We're not going to hurt you. We promise. We just want to say thank you in a real way." Then a third voice, high-pitched and young, joined in. "Please, Mr. Scales? I want to see you. You were very brave and you saved us." Kale's breath got stuck in his throat. It was them. The family of the person who was attacked. They had returned. They were really looking for him. But why? No one had ever looked for him before. Nobody had ever wanted to find him before except to get rid of him. He stayed still where he was hiding, his mind racing with confusion and disbelief. There had to be some kind of trap here. Maybe they told the station's security about him. They might have told everyone about the dangerous hybrid that attacked the pirates. They might have wanted to make sure he was caught and given to the Galactic Council. But the voice of that little girl didn't sound like she was trying to trick me. She really sounded excited, even happy. Kale's curiosity started to get the better of his caution. He moved very slowly toward the small hole that led from his hiding place to the main maintenance corridor. He could see them now through the hole. The woman was there, still in her gray scientific uniform, though it was dirty and torn from the attack. The man stood next to her with a flashlight that lit up the dark hallway. The little girl was in the middle, holding both of their hands. She was looking around with wide eyes, clearly interested in the parts of the station she had never seen before. They didn't seem mad or scared. They didn't have any weapons or security guards with them. It was just three people slowly walking through the maintenance areas, really looking for him. Cale made a choice that went against everything he had learned about how to stay alive in 19 years. He came out of the shadows and into the hallway, which was about 10 feet away from them. The man's device shone directly on him, making his emerald scales shine and his golden eyes glow. The three people turned to face him right away. No one moved for a second. Cale stood there, his body tense and ready to run if he saw or heard anything that scared him. People always saw what he really was at this point and thought he was too different, too strange, and too wrong to be treated like a person. But the little girl smiled the biggest smile Cale had ever seen. She let go of her parents' hands and walked toward him. The woman quickly reached out of a protective instinct, but the man gently touched her arm and held her back. They were letting their daughter get close to him. The girl stopped a few feet away and tilted her head to look at Cale with interest. "Your scales are so pretty," she said, as if she were talking about someone's shirt or haircut. "They're like gems. And your eyes are really neat too. They look like a cat's eyes, but they're gold." Cale was at a loss for words. No one had ever said that any part of him was pretty or cool. He just stood there, completely shocked by this little person who was not afraid of him at all. The woman stepped forward and her face looked warm and real. "Hi, I'm Rebecca," she said. "This is my husband Nathan and our daughter Lily. We have been searching high and low for you. We wanted to say thank you in the right way for what you did earlier. You kept us alive." Cale found his voice, but it was rough and shaky. "You don't have to thank me. I did what anyone else would have done." Nathan shook his head firmly. "No. No one. During that attack, most people ran away. They saved their own lives. But you put yourself in danger to protect people you don't know. Not everyone does that. That's what heroes do." The word hero hit Cale like a punch. No one had ever called him that before. No one had ever said anything nice about him. His eyes began to burn with feelings he usually kept hidden. Rebecca took a bag off her shoulder and held it out to him. "We brought food. Food that is real, not junk from the station. We thought you might be hungry. Can we sit down and talk to you for a bit? We really want to know you." Cale looked at the bag that was offered. Sharing a meal was such a simple act, but to him it meant something that couldn't happen. These people wanted to be with him. They had looked for him for hours in dangerous, broken hallways. They were acting like he was important. He slowly reached out and grabbed the bag. It was heavier than he thought it would be because it was full of real food. The smell alone made him want to eat. He couldn't remember the last time he had eaten real food that was made for him. Why? He couldn't stop the question from coming out. "Why are you doing this? You saw who I am. I am a mix. I'm not legal. The universe says I shouldn't be here. Why aren't you scared of me like everyone else?" Rebecca's face got even softer. She got down on one knee to be at eye level with him, showing him more respect than anyone else had ever shown him. "Cale," she said, somehow already knowing that his name must be something like that. "We don't see a monster when we look at you. We don't see anything that is against the law or wrong. We see a brave young man who chose to protect others even though he didn't have to. We see someone who deserves kindness just like everyone else." Lily walked right up to Cale and lightly touched one of the scales on his arm with her little finger. She said with confidence, "You're not scary. You're one of a kind. It's not bad to be different. It makes you special." Cale's insides broke open. All the years of being turned down, being alone, and being unwanted came crashing down at once. He felt weak in the legs and slowly sat down on the cold metal floor. Lily sat down next to him right away, which shocked him to the core. She was completely at ease with him. Nathan sat down with them, crossed his legs, and opened the food bag. He took out containers of real hot food like what you would get in a nice restaurant, not the cold scraps Cale was used to. Nathan simply said, "Let's eat together," and handed Cale a container. And there, in a broken space station's maintenance corridor that no one else remembered, Cale had his first real meal with other people. They talked and ate, and for the first time in his life, Cale didn't feel alone. Cale hadn't tasted anything like the food Rebecca and Nathan had brought in years. There was roasted chicken with herbs, fresh vegetables that made a crunch when he bit into them, soft, warm bread, and even a small container of chocolate pudding that Lily made him try first. He felt almost pain with every bite because it reminded him of everything he had been missing, but at the same time, it was the best meal he had ever had. They sat together in the dimly lit maintenance hallway for more than an hour. Lily was very at ease next to Kale, talking about her favorite things. She told him about her cat Whiskers, who lived on Earth, her school where she was learning to read big chapter books, and how she wanted to be a space explorer like her mom when she grew up. Rebecca said that she was a xenobiologist, which is a scientist who studies alien life forms and how different species adapt to living in different places in the galaxy. She had been doing research on some rare fungi that only grew in the lower levels of Station Vex 7. Nathan was an engineer who made life support systems for ships that traveled deep into space. They had brought Lily with them because the mission was supposed to be safe and teach them something. Kale found himself talking about things he had never talked about before as they talked. He told them how he grew up alone on the station, how his parents were killed, and how he had to fight every day to find food and stay away from people who wanted to hurt him. Rebecca looked at Nathan with real compassion, and Nathan's jaw tightened with anger at how Kale had been treated. Rebecca's face lit up with amazement when Kale said that he had taught himself to read by using old data terminals and parts of the station that weren't being used anymore. "That's amazing," she said. "You're self-taught? What topics are you most interested in?" Kale was embarrassed but told the truth. "I enjoy learning about technology and engineering. How things work. How to make them work again. I sometimes fix broken tools I find in the maintenance areas just to get better at it. And I read a lot about Earth. About people. I always wanted to know what it would be like to be normal." Nathan leaned in with interest. "What kinds of repairs can you make?" Kale talked about different projects he had finished for the next 20 minutes. He had fixed broken data pads, rewired power junctions, and even got an old hover cart to work again. Nathan was really impressed and asked Kale technical questions that Kale answered with surprising knowledge. Eventually, the talk turned to Kale's unusual body. Rebecca, who was curious about science, asked him soft questions about his mixed nature. Kale talked about how his draconite side made him stronger, faster, and more durable. His scales could handle both very hot and very cold temperatures and small impacts. He could change his vision to see heat signatures, which was helpful in the dark hallways where he spent most of his time. He healed faster than humans do. Wounds that would take humans weeks to heal would heal in days for him. But he also told them what was bad about it. How he looked made him a target. How he didn't have a legal identity in any system. How the Galactic Council had labeled him as an illegal existence, which meant he couldn't travel freely, couldn't get a real job, and couldn't do anything that needed official paperwork. Lily, who had been playing with a small toy her dad had given her and listening quietly, suddenly looked up at Kale with her innocent blue eyes. "That's not fair," she said with the kind of certainty that only kids have. "You didn't do anything wrong. You should be able to go wherever you want." Kale smiled sadly at her. "The galaxy doesn't work that way, little one. There are rules and I break those rules just by being there." Rebecca and Nathan looked at each other for a long time, one of those silent conversations that married couples have over time. Something passed between them and they made a choice without saying anything. Nathan finally said something. "Kale, what if there was a place where those rules didn't apply? Where you could live without being afraid and have a real future?" Kale gave him a doubtful look. "That place doesn't exist. The Galactic Council has power over everything. Even the colonies on the Outer Rim follow their rules about hybrids." Rebecca reached out and touched Kale's scaled hand softly. She didn't flinch at all at the feel of it. "Not everywhere," she said in a soft voice. "Earth has some freedom in how it runs its own affairs. We follow the rules for trade and diplomacy in the galaxy, but we get to decide who can live on our planet and who can become a citizen." Kale's heart began to race. He wasn't sure what they were trying to say, but it seemed impossible. "What are you talking about?" Nathan spoke clearly and to the point. "Come with us, we say. Come to Earth. Live with our family. We own a house with extra rooms. Rebecca works at a research institute that would be very interested in your unique biology and would treat you with respect. I know people at technical schools where you could really improve your engineering skills. Kale, you could have a real life." The offer hung in the air like something delicate and valuable. Kale stared at them, unable to understand what they were saying. This couldn't be true. People didn't just ask homeless hybrids to come live with them on Earth, the legendary birthplace of humanity and one of the safest planets in the galaxy. Kale said, "You don't know me," his voice barely above a whisper. "You met me a few hours ago. Why do you trust me? How do you know I won't be a threat or cause trouble?" Rebecca gently squeezed his hand. "We know enough. We know you're not afraid. We know you're nice. We know that you chose to help even though you could have stayed hidden and safe. That tells us everything we need to know about who you are." Lily climbed up on Kale's lap like kids do without thinking about it, wrapping her small arms around his neck in a hug. "Please come with us," she said into his shoulder. "You can meet Whiskers. And I can show you around my room. We can be friends for life. Cale's eyes were on fire with tears he had been holding back. His throat was tight. People from the Galactic Council will come after me if they find out. They might want to arrest me and kill me like they did my parents. I can't put you in harm's way. I can't put your safety or your daughter's safety at risk. Nathan's face became hard and determined. Let them give it a try. Earth isn't a backwater colony that does what the Council tells it to do. We have our own laws, military, and freedom. They'll have to get through us to get to you. And more importantly, they will have to deal with every person who thinks that where someone comes from is less important than who they choose to be. Rebecca said, also, there are millions of people living on Earth. You might be able to fit in better than you think. People are used to different things. We have people who have had their genes changed, people who have had their bodies enhanced with technology, and all kinds of other differences. You wouldn't stand out as much as you think you would. Cale looked down at Lily, who had pulled away from the hug and was now looking at his face with full trust and acceptance. He thought about what they were offering. A place to live. A family. Learning. A time to come. Things he had stopped dreaming about years ago because he was too sad to think about them. But he still had doubts. What if I don't belong? What if I'm too different for Earth? What if they there hate me too? Nathan smiled, and it was a warm, sure smile. Then we'll deal with it together. Cale, you won't be alone anymore. That's what it means to be family. We stand by each other, help each other, and keep each other safe. If you come with us, you'll be part of our family. Rebecca took out a small data pad and showed Cale pictures of Earth. The oceans are a beautiful blue, the forests are green, the cities are huge with tall buildings, and the suburbs are quiet with houses surrounded by grass and trees. This could be your home, she said softly. You could wake up every day and see the sun rise over real mountains. You could go outside without hiding. You could have friends, go to school, and get jobs. You could really live, Cale, not just get by. Cale looked at the pictures, his heart breaking with a hope he was too scared to accept. He had been turned down so many times and let down so many times. What if this was just another cruel joke the universe was playing on him? But then Lily took his face in her small hands and made him look right at her. You saved us, she said in a serious tone. Now let us help you. Please? Cale made a choice that would change everything in that moment, when he looked into the innocent, hopeful eyes of this little girl and saw her parents giving him something he thought was impossible. Okay, he said in a shaky voice. I'll go with you. The Taylor family's research ship, the Aurora Dawn, took 8 days to get from Station Vex 7 to Earth. Cale felt like he was living in a dream for those 8 days, and he didn't want to wake up. He had his own cabin, which was small but cozy, and it had a real bed instead of a pile of blankets he had found. He had never been in a bathroom with running hot water before. Rebecca would call him to the galley 3 times a day so they could eat real meals together as a family. Lily had made herself Cale's official tour guide and constant companion. She took him on a tour of the ship and told him what each system did with the confidence of a child who had grown up traveling through space. She taught him games, let him read her storybooks, and talked nonstop about all the fun things they would do when they got to Earth. Nathan spent hours with Cale in the ship's small workshop, teaching him more advanced engineering ideas and letting him help with regular maintenance. Cale took in everything like a sponge. His hybrid mind was able to process technical information at an amazing speed. Nathan was really impressed by how quickly Cale picked things up and how easily he understood complicated systems. Rebecca did some gentle medical scans on Cale with his permission to record how his body worked. She was interested in how well his human and draconite biology worked together. His cells worked very well, his immune system was very strong, and the way his brain worked showed that he could process information faster than most people or draconites. Cale cared most about the talks they had during those quiet dinners. They talked about their hopes and fears, funny stories and sad memories. The Taylors didn't see him as a research subject or a charity case. They saw him as a person who mattered. Cale would sometimes find himself laughing at Nathan's bad jokes or smiling at Lily's silly songs, and the feelings would be so strong that they almost hurt. On the 6th day of their journey, Cale woke up from a bad dream with his body covered in cold sweat. He had a dream that the Galactic Council had found him and was dragging him away while the Taylors watched and couldn't do anything. He sat on the edge of his bed, shaking, and tried to calm his racing heart. Someone knocked softly on the door of his cabin. Cale? Are you all right? I heard you scream. Rebecca's voice was soft and worried. When he opened the door, he saw her standing there in a nightgown with her hair down around her shoulders. She looked just like the mother he had never known. He broke down without thinking, and tears streamed down his scaled cheeks as all of his fear and worry came out. Rebecca didn't think twice. She stepped up to him and hugged him tightly while he cried. She whispered, It's going to be okay. You're safe now. We won't let anyone take you away. I promise. They had a connection that went beyond words at that moment. Rebecca became the mother figure Cale had always needed, and he became like a second child to her, someone she was determined to protect and care for. Nathan called everyone to the bridge on the 8th day. We're getting close to the solar system of Earth, he said with a smile. Cale, come see this. Cale went to the main viewport, and what he saw left him speechless. A blue and white marble was floating in space, still far away but visible. The Earth. The famous home planet of all humans. The planet he had read about in hundreds of files and dreamed about when he was alone at night. Cale could see the continents, the huge oceans, and the clouds that were swirling as they got closer. It was more beautiful than any picture could show. He put his hand on the window and looked through it with wide, golden eyes. Lily took his other hand and squeezed it with excitement. She said proudly, "That's home. That's where we live. Now it's your home too." The aurora dawn came into Earth's atmosphere over the Pacific Ocean. Cale watched through the viewport as they went down through clouds, catching glimpses of blue water below. His heart was racing with both fear and excitement. What if this didn't work? What if Earth didn't want him like the station didn't? They landed at a private spaceport near Seattle, which is a city on the northwest coast of North America. The landing went well, and Cale smelled the air on Earth for the first time when the ship's door opened. It was full of smells he couldn't place: plant life, moisture, and something else that smelled alive in a way that station air never did. It was strange to step off the ship and onto real planetary ground. The ground didn't vibrate with machines. There was real gravity, not the fake kind that rotating stations make. There was a real sky above him, with real clouds moving across it. He could see mountains with snow-capped peaks and forests of green trees in the distance. Nathan put a hand on Cale's shoulder and said, "Welcome home." The Taylors lived in a quiet suburb that was about 30 minutes from the spaceport. Nathan drove through the city in his car while Cale pressed his face against the window to try to see everything at once. There were thousands of people everywhere, on sidewalks, in cars, and at outdoor cafes. Some buildings were taller than any other building on Station VEX 7, and they reached for the sky. In between neighborhoods there were parks with grass and trees. Everything was so full of life, color, and potential. Cale just stared when they got to the Taylor house. The building was 2 stories tall, painted light blue with white trim, and had a yard with real grass and flowers around it. There was a tree in the front yard that looked like it had been there for a long time. Its branches spread out. "This is your home?" Cale couldn't believe what he heard. Rebecca chuckled softly. "This is where we all live now. Come on, I'll show you where you sleep." The house was warm and cozy on the inside, and the furniture and personal things made it feel like a real home. Pictures of the Taylor family at different ages and on different planets were on the walls. They were happy memories. Lily picked up a fat orange cat right away. There were books on the shelves and plants on the windowsills. "This is Whiskers," Lily said as she brought the cat over to Cale. "Don't worry, he's nice." Cale carefully reached out to pet the cat, who sniffed his hand with scales and then purred and rubbed against him. The cat even liked him. Rebecca took Cale upstairs to a bedroom that was bigger than the whole hiding place he had on the station. There was a Real bed with a soft mattress and several pillows, a desk with a computer terminal, shelves that needed to be filled, and a window that looked out over the backyard where more trees swayed in the wind. Rebecca said simply, "This is yours. You can make it look however you want. Tomorrow we'll go shopping for clothes and anything else you need." Cale slowly walked into the room and touched the bed, the desk, and the curtains. His own space. His own area. Not a stolen corner or a hiding place, but a real place that was his. Cale couldn't sleep that first night, even though he was very tired from the trip. He sat by the window and watched the sky get darker and the stars come out. Stars that you can see from the surface of a planet, not through station ports or ship viewports. He could hear things outside like insects chirping, the wind rustling through the leaves, and the sound of cars on the main road. There was a soft knock on his door around midnight. Lily was holding a stuffed animal. She said, "I can't sleep. Too excited. Can I sit with you?" Cale smiled and moved to the side to make room for her on the window seat. They sat together in silence for a while, comfortably watching the stars. "Are you glad you came?" Lily asked in a low voice. Cale looked down at this little girl who had always accepted him since the first time they met. He thought about everything that had happened in just over a week. His life had gone from being lonely and just getting by to this. Sitting in his own room in a real house on Earth with someone who cared about him. "Yes," he said, his voice full of feeling. "I'm glad I came." The next few weeks were full of new things that happened very quickly. Rebecca brought Kale to the research institute where she worked and introduced him to her co-workers. They were interested in him instead of scared, which surprised him. A few xenobiologists asked polite questions about his hybrid nature because they were genuinely interested in learning more rather than judging him. Nathan signed Kale up for online classes at a community college, starting with math and basic engineering. Kale ate up the material and often finished weeks of work in just days. His teachers were amazed by how smart he was and how much he wanted to learn. It had been 3 months since Kale got to Earth, and they had been the best months of his life. He had gotten used to a routine that felt almost too normal. He would wake up in his own bedroom every morning, eat breakfast with the Taylors, and then spend the rest of the day studying advanced engineering courses online. He often helped Nathan in his home workshop or Rebecca with her research projects in the afternoons. Family time was set aside for the evenings. They would watch movies, play games, or just talk about their days. The people in the area had slowly gotten used to seeing Kale around. People would look at his scales and golden eyes in shock at first, but then they became curious. People in the neighborhood found out that he was friendly and helpful. He would often offer to fix broken electronics or help with yard work. Mrs. Patterson, who lives next door, even brought over a pie to say thank you after Kale fixed her broken irrigation system. Kale had also made friends at the community college. Tyler was a mechanical engineering student who loved old Earth motorcycles and liked to take things apart and put them back together, just like Kale. Megan was studying computer science and worked with Kale on programming projects a lot. Brandon was in the robotics program and had gotten Kale to join the college's robotics club. They didn't treat him like a freak or a test subject. They acted like he was just another student trying to make a life for himself. Kale finally felt like he belonged somewhere for the first time in his life. He would smile for no reason or laugh at something silly Lily said and realize that this was what happiness felt like. He had a family, friends, a place to live, and a bright future ahead of him. Rebecca would hug him when he was so happy that he cried, and she would know without saying a word what he was going through. But peace never lasts, especially for someone like Kale. On Tuesday afternoon, everything changed. Kale was at the library at school with Tyler and Megan, working on a hard engineering project. Suddenly, his phone buzzed with an urgent message from Nathan. The words made him feel sick. Come home right away. Don't talk to anyone. Use the back roads. Emergency. Kale quickly made excuses to his friends and left the library, his heart racing with worry. He took the long way home, avoiding main roads. His draconite instincts told him that something was very wrong. When he finally got to the house, he saw Nathan standing by the window looking nervous and tense. What's the matter? Kale asked right away. Nathan turned to look at him and his face was serious. The Galactic Council is aware of your presence. They know you're on Earth and they're asking us to give you up to them. The words hit Kale like a punch in the gut. His worst fear was coming true. How did they know? Rebecca came out of the office with a data pad in her hand. Her face was pale but determined. Someone at the research institute must have told them you were there. It's possible that they saw your genetic markers in old council databases. It's possible that someone sold the information. We don't know how, but an official group from the council came to Earth this morning. Kale's legs felt weak. His mind was racing as he sank onto the couch. I have to go. I have to go. I won't let them take you in for hiding me. I won't let your family get in trouble because of me. Nathan moved to sit next to Kale and said, Absolutely not. You aren't going anywhere. We protect our own and now you're a part of this family. But the council is in charge of interstellar law, Kale said, his voice shaking. They can punish Earth. They can stop trade routes and stop technology from being shared. Because of me, the economy of Earth could get worse. It could have an effect on millions of people. I can't let that happen. Rebecca sat next to Kale and held his scaled hand in hers. Kale, pay close attention to what I'm saying. Earth isn't a weak colony that does whatever the council says. We were one of the first groups to join the galactic community. We have power over the economy, the military, and politics. We have values, which is even more important. One of those rules is that we don't leave people who need our help behind. The house's communication system rang before Kale could answer. Nathan turned on the screen and an alien with a serious face appeared. He was a Zentari, a type of person who is known for following rules and procedures very strictly. He had pale gray skin and completely black eyes. He wore the formal robes of an ambassador to the Galactic Council. The alien said in a cold, clear voice, This is Ambassador Vorin of the Galactic Council. I am talking to Nathan and Rebecca Taylor's house. We know you are hiding the illegal hybrid known as Kale-9. Galactic Laws Protocol 7 says that this person must be turned over to the Council within 24 hours. If you don't follow the rules, your planet will face serious consequences. Nathan's jaw tightened, but he spoke in a calm and controlled way. Ambassador Vorin, this is Nathan Taylor. Kale is the name of the person you're talking about, not Kale 9. The government of Earth is protecting him. He has been given asylum and now lives on our planet. We won't give him up to anyone. Vorin's face didn't change, but his voice got even colder. You don't get how serious this is. This hybrid is the result of illegal genetic research. The Council's rules say that he shouldn't exist. The Council will impose immediate economic sanctions if Earth doesn't cooperate. Your trade deals will be put on hold. You will no longer be able to use some technologies. Your planet's reputation in the galaxy will be very bad. Rebecca stood up, and her body language changed from that of a worried mother to that of a confident scientist. Ambassador Vorin, with all due respect, the Council does not have the power to oversee who we grant citizenship to on Earth. Kale has not done anything wrong. He didn't choose to be born, and punishing him for what his parents did is wrong in the first place. Vorin's black eyes looked like they could see right through the screen. Justice doesn't matter. The law is unchangeable. You have to give up the hybrid. You have 1 day to do what you need to do. The effects will start after that. The screen turned black. The room was so quiet that it felt heavy and suffocating. Lily, who had been listening from the stairs, ran down and hugged Kale. They can't take you, she said, her voice muffled against his chest. I won't let them. You're my brother now. Kale hugged her back and fought back tears. I should just go with them. I can't let Earth suffer because of what I did. Starting a fight between your world and the galactic government isn't worth it. Don't you dare say that, Rebecca said sharply, her eyes blazing with anger. You are worth every penny. And you're not the only one making this choice. Kale, this is bigger than just you now. Nathan was already on his phone making quick calls. I'm getting in touch with everyone I know in the government. We need to get this to the top levels right away. Things got worse very quickly over the next few hours. Nathan's friends in the government of Earth took the issue seriously. There were emergency meetings at the United Nations main office in New York. David Monroe, the Secretary General, was given a report on the situation. The media started to get word of the Council's ultimatum, and all of a sudden, Kale's story was everywhere. By night, social media was full of activity. Hashtags like Protect Kale and Earth Stand Strong were popular all over the world. Millions of people were posting messages of support, telling Kale's story, and telling their government not to give in to the Council's demands. Artists were making digital portraits of Kale, musicians were writing songs about fighting injustice, and protesters were gathering outside government buildings with signs saying he had the right to stay. Kale couldn't believe what he saw on the news. He asked, "Why are they doing this?" as crowds of people marched through big cities chanting his name. They don't even know who I am. Why would they care about what happens to one hybrid? Rebecca smiled even though she was crying. Because people have been fighting against unfairness for a long time. Throughout our history, we have been discriminated against, oppressed, and ruled by tyrants. We know how it feels to be judged for things we can't change. And a long time ago, we decided that we would defend those who can't defend themselves. The next morning, there was an emergency meeting of the United Nations General Assembly. Every country sent people to represent them. The debate was shown live on TV all over the world and sent to all of the human colonies in space. Ambassador Vorin was able to explain the Council's point of view and repeat his calls for Kale to be turned over. Then Secretary General Monroe stood up to answer. He was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes, but his voice was very strong when he spoke. Ambassador Vorin, the Galactic Council, and everyone else who is listening. Earth has heard what you want, and the answer is no. We are keeping Kale safe. He lives on our planet, and we know that he has all the rights and freedoms that any other human has. We will not give him up to be punished for crimes he didn't commit. People in the assembly hall clapped. People from every country stood up to help. Monroe kept talking and his voice got louder. Earth has always thought that a person's actions and character should be judged, not their genetics or where they were born. Kale has shown that he is brave, kind, and useful to our society. He saved 3 people on Earth when he didn't have to. He has become a part of our community and has always followed our rules and values. Giving him up would mean going against everything we believe in as a species. Vorin's face on the screen stayed the same. Then Earth will have to deal with the results. The Council will start putting sanctions in place right away. Your planet will not be able to trade or work together with other planets. Monroe's face didn't change. Then that's how it is. Earth has survived and thrived through problems that were much worse than economic ones. We'll change, we'll get through this, and we'll never give up our values just because it's easier. Kale is one of us now and we take care of our own. The vote was on. Almost every country in the world voted one by one to give Kale full asylum and citizenship. Only 3 countries didn't vote, and none of them voted to give him up. The message was clear and everyone agreed on it. Kale watched all of this happen, not really able to understand what was going on. Billions of people on a whole planet were standing up for him. They were willing to go through hard times and be alone in politics to protect one hybrid who had spent most of his life thinking he was worthless. The day after the UN vote, the world woke up to a new reality. The Galactic Council followed through on their threat and put sanctions in place right away. Suddenly, trade routes that had been open for years were closed. Ships bringing important parts for technology were not allowed to dock at Earth's orbital stations. Prices for some imported goods began to rise quickly. The financial markets were unstable because investors were worried about the future of the world's economy. But something happened that wasn't planned. Instead of freaking out or turning against Kale, people stood by him even more. Rebecca took Kale to the living room that morning, where the news was on every channel. What he saw made his heart race with emotion. In the streets of Tokyo, thousands of people held signs that said, "We stand with Kale," in both Japanese and English. In London, protesters made a human chain around Parliament to tell their government to stay strong. Musicians in Lagos put on a huge concert, and all the money from ticket sales went to help lessen the economic effects of the sanctions. The movement on social media had grown by a huge amount overnight. People from all over the world were making things that supported Kale. There were digital paintings of him standing tall with the earth behind him. Many songs had been written by musicians about being brave, accepting others, and fighting against unfairness. Writers were writing essays about how Kale's story affected them personally. In just 24 hours, the hashtag #StandWithKale had been used more than 50 million times. But it wasn't just activism on the internet. There was real, physical action going on all over the place. Engineers and scientists were giving up their free time to look for other ways to use the technology that had been blocked from coming in. Companies that made things were changing their factories so that they could make things in the US instead of bringing them in. Nearby human colonies said they would trade more with Earth to make up for the lost galactic trade. Kale sat on the couch and watched everything happen, feeling completely overwhelmed. He whispered, "I don't understand. Why are they doing this? Real people are suffering because of the sanctions. People are losing money and not being able to get the things they need. Why aren't they mad at me?" Nathan sat down next to him and put a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Because people know something that the council doesn't. We know that it's worth it to go through some pain in the short term when you're fighting for what's right. We've seen this happen before in our own past. When we stand up against tyranny and injustice, we've had to deal with boycotts, sanctions, and economic pressure. And we've learned that morals are more important than ease." Lily climbed onto Kale's lap and wrapped her little arms around his neck. She had been very quiet all morning, thinking about everything in her own way. She said softly, "The kids at school are talking about you. Some of their parents are worried about money and things. But you know what? All of my friends told them that you are a hero and that heroes should be protected by the earth." Even the adults paid attention. Rebecca wiped her eyes as she watched another news story about college students raising money to help families who were having trouble paying for things that cost more because they were imported. People have always been at their best when they work together for a common goal. Kale, you've given people something to believe in. Something to fight for. That afternoon, something amazing happened that would change everything. A group of powerful people, such as scientists, business leaders, cultural figures, and former politicians, released a joint statement that went viral in a matter of minutes. The statement said, "We, the undersigned, fully support Kale and Earth's choice to give him asylum. It is fundamentally unfair for the Galactic Council to try to punish someone for how they were born. We ask all civilized species to think about these old laws again. We also promise to use our money, businesses, and power to make sure that Earth not only survives these sanctions but also does well because of them." Some of the most well-known and powerful people in the world signed the list. There were Nobel Prize winners, billionaires in tech, famous artists, Olympic athletes, and well-known religious leaders. Their combined power was worth trillions of dollars and had billions of loyal followers. The business world reacted within hours. Big human companies said they were changing their supply chains, spending a lot of money on making things in their own countries, and setting up new trade routes between human-controlled worlds that went around the Council's restricted routes. The Council's punishment was turning into a chance for people to be free and come up with new ideas. Kale got a message on his phone. It was from Tyler, who he went to college with. "Hey, you need to see what's going on at school. Come down here." Nathan took Kale to the community college and Rebecca and Lily insisted on going with him. Kale couldn't believe what he saw when they got there. There were a lot of students, teachers, and people from the community on campus. There was a rally planned, and hundreds of people were in the main quad. Someone saw Kale as soon as he got out of the car. That's him. That's Kale. People turned to look at him, and for a moment, Kale's old instinct to run and hide kicked in. But then something else happened. People in the crowd started to clap. Not polite, but loud, steady clapping and cheering. People were holding signs they made themselves that said things like, "Kale is one of us," and "Humanity doesn't abandon family." People were crying, people were smiling, and everyone was there for each other. Tyler pushed through the crowd and hugged Kale tightly. "You're like the most famous person in the world right now, bro. And everyone is on your side." Next came Megan, whose eyes were red from crying. "We've been planning all day. Right now, students from more than 300 colleges and universities around the world are holding rallies at the same time. We're all saying the same thing. Earth made the right choice." Brandon came with the whole robotics club behind him. The engineering department said in a statement, "If the council wants to limit our access to their technology, that's fine. We'll come up with our own new ideas. Kale, they want you to help with their new research projects that are already starting. They believe that your unique view as a hybrid could lead to new discoveries." The people who put on the rally asked Kale to say a few words to the crowd. He was scared. He had never spoken in front of a lot of people before, and he had only ever talked to a few people at a time. But he slowly walked up to the makeshift stage with Rebecca squeezing one hand and Lily holding the other. The crowd quieted down, and hundreds of faces looked at him with hope and support. Kale stood at the microphone and looked out at the crowd with his golden eyes. He could see people of all ages and backgrounds here because they thought he needed protection. When he started to talk, his voice shook. "I don't know what to say. 3 months ago, I lived in a broken space station's ventilation shaft, ate trash, and thought I was a mistake that shouldn't exist. Everyone I had ever met had told me, either with words or actions, that I was horrible, that I was wrong just because I was alive." He stopped for a moment to get his courage up. "Then I met the Taylors and they showed me something I had never seen before. Being kind. Being accepting. Well, they took me to Earth and gave me a chance to live a real life. And now I see that your whole planet is standing up for me, a half-human hybrid that most of you have never met. You are willing to deal with economic problems, political pressure, and problems with other countries just to keep one person safe." He kept going even though tears were streaming down his scaly cheeks. "I don't deserve this. I haven't done anything to deserve this level of loyalty. But what you're teaching me is amazing. You're showing me that people don't judge others based on their genes, species, or where they came from. How you measure it depends on who they are and what they do." The crowd was completely quiet, listening to every word. "I want you to know that I see you. I see every artist who's making something, every scientist who's coming up with new ideas, and every regular person who's accepting higher prices and economic uncertainty because they believe that standing up for what's right is more important than convenience. I see you, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to live up to the faith you have in me." His voice got stronger and more sure of itself. "The Galactic Council thinks they're punishing Earth. They think they're showing you what happens when you don't listen to them. But they don't get what it means to be human. You've been through a lot worse than this. You've gotten through things that would have killed other species. And you've always come out stronger, more united, and more determined." The crowd cheered, but Kale held up his hand and asked for quiet again. "I am proud, honored, and humbled to be able to say something today that I never thought I would be able to say. I'm a person. Not because of my genes, but because people have taken me in as one of their own. Because you've shown me what it really means to be a person. It means fighting for people who can't fight for themselves. It means standing up for what's right even when it's hard. It means thinking that everyone has the right to respect, dignity, and a chance at a good life." The applause that came after was so loud it hurt. People were crying, hugging, and chanting Kale's name. The event was being shown live on TV all over the world and sent to every human colony in space. Millions of people were watching this hybrid, a young man who had been turned down by the galaxy, claim his place among humans. The days after Kale's speech were full of a strange mix of hope and stress. Earth was getting used to the sanctions, and even though there were economic problems, people were being very strong. Local factories were getting busier to make up for goods that were brought in. Scientists were working on new technologies. The human spirit of creativity and change was on full display. But the Galactic Council and Ambassador Vorin were not happy with how things were going. They thought that Earth would give in to pressure in a few days or weeks at most. Instead, people were doing well, using the sanctions as a chance to become more independent. People were questioning the Council's power in a way that hadn't happened in hundreds of years, and they couldn't let that go on. Cale had gone back to his normal routine as much as he could. He went to his online classes, worked on engineering projects, and hung out with the Taylors. But there was always a nagging worry that something bad was going to happen. He could tell because Rebecca was always checking the news, Nathan had put up more security cameras around the house, and Lily held his hand a little tighter when they went outside. On a Thursday night, 2 weeks after the UN vote, everything came to a head. Cale was walking home from the library at the community college, where he had been studying with Tyler and Megan. The sky turned orange and purple as the sun went down. It was a beautiful evening, quiet and calm, and Cale was thankful for every moment of his new life. He was only 3 blocks from home when he saw something strange. This time of night, the street was unusually empty. There were no other people walking by and no cars were driving by. The neighborhood was eerily quiet. Cale's draconite instincts told him to be careful, and his muscles tensed up on their own. Then they showed up. 6 people came out from behind buildings and cars and formed a loose circle around him. They weren't wearing their official Galactic Council uniforms. These people were mercenaries and bounty hunters. They wore armor that didn't match and carried weapons that were clearly illegal on Earth. Cale could see that they were different types of aliens by the way they moved and how their bodies were shaped, even though their faces were covered. The biggest one, who was clearly in charge, spoke standard English with a strong accent. "The hybrid is called Cale. You're coming along with us. The council wants you to be alive when you get there, but they didn't say you had to be hurt. Please don't make this hard." Cale's heart was racing, but his mind was racing through his choices. Even with his hybrid powers, he couldn't fight 6 armed mercenaries. But he also couldn't let them get him. If he was caught, everything that Earth stood for would be in danger. People would have made all those sacrifices for nothing. "I'm not going anywhere," Cale said, his voice steady even though he was scared. "You are on Earth. Just being here with those weapons is against a lot of laws." The leader laughed, and it was a harsh sound. "Earth laws don't matter when the pay is good. The council is willing to pay a lot of money to catch you. Are you coming quietly now, or do we have to hurt you?" A voice cut through the tension before Cale could say anything. "He's not going anywhere with you." Tyler was the one. He had come around the corner and he wasn't by himself. Megan was there with him, along with Brandon and at least 12 other college students. They all had makeshift weapons like metal pipes, wooden bats, and tools from the engineering workshop. They looked scared but set on what they wanted. The leader of the mercenaries growled, "You kids should go. This isn't your business. We don't want to hurt people who haven't done anything wrong." Tyler stepped forward, his hands shaking but his voice strong. "Cale is a friend of ours. He's one of us. To take him, you have to get through all of us first." The mercenaries were unsure. They were hired to catch one hybrid, not to fight a group of civilians. But they had gotten too much money to just walk away. He raised his gun and pointed it at Tyler. Cale made his choice then. His draconite side came out, filling him with the instincts and focus of a predator. He couldn't let his friends get hurt because of him. He would make sure he was the only one in danger if there was going to be a fight. He moved so quickly that it was hard to see. His hybrid body let him cover the distance between himself and the closest mercenary in less than a second. His scaled fist hit the alien's armored chest, and the force of the blow sent the mercenary flying back into a parked car, where it dented the metal. The other mercenaries reacted right away, raising their weapons and firing energy blasts into the air. Cale dodged and weaved, and his faster reflexes helped him avoid most of the shots. One blast hit his shoulder, burning through his shirt and scorching his scales. The pain only made him more focused. Tyler and the other students ran forward, not to fight the mercenaries directly, but to cause trouble and confusion. They threw things, yelled, and did other things that made it hard for the bounty hunters to focus on Cale. Brandon hit one mercenary's legs with a metal pipe, making him fall. Megan turned on a strobe light she had brought from the robotics lab, which confused another person. Cale took advantage of the confusion. He took the weapon from a dead mercenary and used it as a club, hitting his attackers with its weight instead of firing it. His draconite strength made every blow deadly. 3 of the 6 mercenaries were down and groaning on the ground in less than 5 minutes. But then everything changed. The sound of sirens filled the air and got louder very quickly. There were a lot of cars at both ends of the street, but they weren't police cars. They were military trucks that were dark and scary, and the sides had the Earth Defense Force logo on them. Soldiers poured out, fully armed and wearing full combat gear. Their weapons made the mercenaries' gear look like toys. A loudspeaker blasted out a commanding voice. "Hello, this is Colonel Hayes from the Earth Defense Force. Put down your weapons right now. You are under arrest for breaking the law of Earth." The other mercenaries looked at each other, clearly figuring out their chances. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and had failed their mission. They slowly put down their guns and raised their hands. Colonel Hayes herself came forward. She was tall and had short gray hair. Her sharp eyes missed nothing. She went straight to Cale, who was breathing hard and had a lot of small cuts on him. "Are you okay, son?" she asked in a surprisingly soft voice. Cale nodded, still trying to figure out what had just happened. "How did you find out? How did you get here so quickly?" Hayes smiled a little. "We've been watching you since the council made their threats. Did you really think we wouldn't protect you? We were keeping an eye on these mercenaries as soon as they entered Earth's atmosphere. We let them show themselves before we moved in." She turned to talk to Tyler and the other students, who were still holding their makeshift weapons and looked shocked and full of adrenaline. "You kids were very brave tonight. Courage that is stupid and reckless, but still courage. Your friend is lucky to have you." Tyler smiled even though his hands were shaking. "Ma'am, we couldn't just let them take him." Nathan's car screeched around the corner, and Rebecca's car followed closely behind. The defense force must have told them. Rebecca ran to Cale and quickly checked his wounds, while Nathan held him tightly. "Are you hurt? Are you all right?" Rebecca asked in a panic, her hands checking the burn on his shoulder. "I'm fine, Mom," Cale said, and then he stopped. He had just called Rebecca Mom for the first time. The word had come out naturally, without thinking. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears and she hugged him tightly. Nathan came over and put his arms around both of them. "We're taking you home." At this moment, Colonel Hayes, on the other hand, held up a hand. "I really need Cale to come with me. Someone wants to see him. Someone important." An hour later, Cale was in a safe government building in downtown Seattle with the Taylor family. He was still wearing his ripped and burned clothes. They were taken to a conference room with a big video screen on one wall and high-tech security systems. The screen turned on, and the face of Secretary General David Monroe came up. Cale could see the UN headquarters in New York behind him. But Monroe wasn't by himself. The screen split to show a lot of other faces, including important-looking people from all over the world and from human colonies in space. "Cale," Monroe said, his voice warm but serious. "I wanted to talk to you in person after what happened tonight. The Galactic Council has gone beyond diplomatic pressure. They've hired illegal soldiers to take you away from Earth. We can't ignore this act of aggression." Cale's stomach got tight. "Sorry, sir. I never meant to start a fight between countries. Maybe it would be best if I just left Earth and went to a place where the Council couldn't find me." Monroe's face relaxed. "Son, you're not doing anything. The Council's unfair laws and refusal to respect Earth's sovereignty are what are causing this crisis. And I want you to know something very important. The event tonight has only made people more determined." Someone else on the screen spoke up. Admiral Chin, who was in charge of Earth's Space Defense Command, was there. "The video of the fight from tonight has already gone viral. The whole world has seen you fight to stay safe while your human friends put their lives on the line to protect you. They've seen soldiers from the Earth Defense Force protect one of our own. People have never been more behind you." A third voice joined in. This one belonged to Dr. Williams, Earth's top diplomat. "We've also gotten something we didn't expect. Some other species in the galactic community have privately contacted us to say they support Earth's position. They don't like how the Council sticks to old laws so strictly. Cale, you've become a symbol of a bigger movement for change." Monroe leaned forward and stared hard. "This is what will happen. I'm going to talk directly to the Galactic Council tomorrow. I want to make it very clear that Earth will not put up with any more violence against you or any of our people. We will also suggest a motion to change the laws about hybrid species. The galaxy needs to stop doing these unfair things." Cale was overwhelmed by how big what he was hearing was. But what if the Council says no? What if this makes things worse than sanctions? Monroe's face became determined. "Then Earth will stand strong. We've been in danger of going extinct before and made it through. We have put aside our differences and come together as a species. Even though we've had a lot of problems, we've made it to the stars. If standing up for what's right means fighting with the Council, then that's what it is. People have never backed down from standing up for what they believe in, and we won't start now." Cale woke up in his bedroom the morning after the mercenary attack with bandages on his shoulder and other small injuries that were healing. His draconite body was already working to fix the damage, but Rebecca still wanted him to get the right medical care. He had learned that mothers did that. Even when you told them you were fine, they still worried and cared. He could hear the Taylor family getting ready for the day downstairs. Lily was talking about something that happened at school while Nathan read the news headlines out loud. Normal, everyday sounds that Cale still thought were amazing and special after 3 months. He got out of bed slowly, his muscles hurt but still worked, and went downstairs. As soon as Lily saw him, she jumped up from her breakfast and ran over to hug him, being careful not to hurt him. "You're awake. Mom told me you needed to sleep, but I've been waiting a long time to see you." Rebecca turned away from the stove where she was making pancakes, and gave him that look that was both relieved and motherly. "How do you feel? Are you feeling dizzy? Do you feel sick? Is your shoulder okay?" "I'm fine really," Cale said as he sat down in his usual chair at the kitchen table. "The burns are already getting better. It should be gone in a few days." Nathan put his tablet down and looked at Cale with a serious look. "The news is calling you a hero. There are a lot of places where you can find the video from last night. People are talking about how you stood up for your friends, how the Earth Defense Force stepped in, and how the students stood up for you. The story is changing a lot." Cale took the plate of pancakes that Rebecca gave him. He wasn't used to getting home-cooked meals yet. "I don't feel like a hero. All I wanted to do was stay alive. Tyler and the others were the ones who were brave. They didn't have to put themselves in danger. That's what makes it heroic," Nathan said softly. "Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It's about doing the right thing even when you're scared. People know that you've done it many times before." In the next few days, things with the Galactic Council got very bad. Secretary General Monroe gave the speech he had promised to the Council, and it was broadcast on every communication network in known space. Cale watched it with the Taylors, his heart racing as Monroe stood in front of a group of representatives from dozens of alien species. Monroe's speech was strong and unyielding. He went into great detail about the mercenaries' attack, showed proof that the Council had indirectly paid for it, and made Earth's position very clear. "Humanity will not put up with violence against our people. Cale is one of us, and anyone who tries to hurt him again will be seen as an act of war. Also, Earth officially suggests a full review and change of the laws about hybrid species. These laws are based on fear and bias, not science or fairness." There was a lot of arguing in the Council chamber. Some species agreed with Earth's position, while others were angry at what they saw as defiance. Ambassador Vorin tried to keep things in order, but it was clear that something big had changed. People were questioning the Council's absolute power in a way that had never happened before. Everyone was shocked by what happened next. 3 other big groups, the Valorians, the Centauri Collective, and the Androni Federation, came out in favor of Earth's plan. They told their own stories of people who had been hurt by the hybrid prohibition laws. They showed with scientific evidence that genetic diversity made species stronger, not weaker. They said that laws that were written hundreds of years ago needed to change as our understanding grew. The argument went on for 3 days. Cale tried to go on with his life during that time, but he couldn't ignore what was going on. All of the news channels reported on what happened at the Council. There were a lot of posts on social media about hybrid rights, genetic freedom, and what identity is. Cale had become the face of a movement he never wanted to lead. The vote happened on the 4th day. It wasn't a full win. The Council didn't get rid of all the laws about hybrid species right away. But they did pass a historic resolution. They stopped enforcing Protocol 7, the law that made it illegal for Cale to be alive. They set up a group to look over all the laws about genetics. And most importantly, they officially recognized that Earth had the right to give Cale asylum and citizenship without punishment. The penalties were taken away. Ambassador Vorin, who had been against the changes until the very end, was quietly moved to a less important job. A new age of galactic politics had begun, one in which humanity's voice was more important and old ideas were being questioned. When the news got to Earth, people all over the world started to celebrate. People filled the streets, waving flags, singing songs, and celebrating not just Cale's safety but also what his story meant. It was a win for fairness, kindness, and the belief that who you are is more important than what you do. The Taylor home was flooded with messages and requests. News outlets wanted to talk to people. Officials in the government wanted to honor Cale. Groups that support certain causes wanted him to speak at their events. It was too much for Cale, and he had a hard time dealing with all the sudden attention. Rebecca and Nathan fiercely protected him, saying no to most requests and carefully planning the few times Cale agreed to be seen. They knew that even though he was now a famous person, he was still a young man who had spent most of his life alone and in pain. He needed time to get used to things, to heal, and to decide who he wanted to be. 6 months after the Council's historic vote, Cale was in the auditorium of the United Nations headquarters in New York. He had been asked to speak at the first meeting of the Interspecies Rights Organization, a new group that works to protect the rights of hybrids, genetic minorities, and anyone else who is discriminated against because of their biology. There were thousands of people and representatives from dozens of species in the auditorium. Some were hybrids like him who had been hiding and could now come out into the open. Some were scientists, politicians, advocates, and regular people who believed in the cause. Camera drones flew around the room, sending the event out across the galaxy. Cale looked out at the crowd and felt his old anxiety trying to come back. But then he saw Rebecca, Nathan, and Lily in the front row. They were smiling at him with love and support that would never end. He saw Tyler, Megan, and Brandon, his loyal friends who had put everything on the line for him. He saw Colonel Hayes in her dress uniform, which stood for the military that had kept him safe. He saw dozens of other hybrids, both young and old, in the audience, all of them looking at him with hope in their eyes. He took a deep breath and started to talk. "My name is Cale, and for the last 8 months I thought I was a mistake. I thought that my life was wrong and that I deserved the hate and rejection I got every day. I lived in the dark, ate trash, and accepted that I would always be an unwanted creature hiding from the galaxy." As he went on, his voice got stronger. "Then something happened that changed everything. A family of people was nice to me. When they looked at me, they didn't see something horrible. They saw someone. They brought me to Earth, gave me a home, and when the whole galaxy wanted them to give me up, they said no." Cale stopped for a moment to let the meaning of that sink in. People didn't know me. Most people had never seen a hybrid before. But they got the basic idea. They knew that every person who thinks and feels deserves respect. They knew that laws can be wrong, that people in power can be unfair, and that sometimes the best thing to do is to stand up and say no, no matter what the cost. The audience was completely quiet and listened to every word. "I'm not special. I'm not anything special. I was just born different, and I was very lucky to meet people who looked past that difference to see the person underneath. But there are thousands, maybe millions of other people who aren't as lucky. Hybrids are hiding out. People whose genes don't fit into neat groups. People who are turned down and mistreated for things that are out of their control." His golden eyes looked over the crowd. "That's why we're here today. The interspecies rights organization's job is to find these people, help them, speak up for them, and change the systems that keep them down. We're going to fight every law that treats people differently because of their genes. We're going to help with research into hybrid biology and health. We're going to make safe places where anyone, no matter what their DNA is, can live freely and safely." Cale's voice was full of feeling. "I thought I was the only one for 19 years. I want to make sure that no one else ever has to feel like that. I want every mixed-race child to know that they are important, that they have rights, and that they have a future. And I want every society in this galaxy to know that having different kinds of people is not a bad thing. It's a good thing." He held onto the podium tightly, and the stage lights bounced off his scaled hands. "To every hybrid who is watching this, no matter where you are or what your situation is, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not a mistake. You are not a horrible person. You are important, you are worthy, and you have the right to live openly and with pride. And everyone here today, including people, Earth, and everyone else, is with you." The applause that came after was deafening. People stood up and cheered and cried. The other hybrids in the audience were openly crying. Many of them were feeling what it was like to be seen, acknowledged, and told they were important for the first time. People crowded around Cale as he stepped away from the podium, wanting to thank him, share their stories, and show their support. But he pushed through the crowd to get to the Taylor family. Lily jumped into his arms, not caring that he was now famous or that cameras were on. "You were great," she said, hugging him around the neck. Rebecca held him tightly and said, "Your parents would be so proud of you." Nathan put his hand on his shoulder, the same shoulder that had been burned in the mercenary attack. It was now completely healed. "You found your purpose, son. You're going to make a difference in the galaxy." Cale stood on the balcony of his hotel room that night and looked out over New York City. The lights went on in every direction. Millions of people lived their lives in this amazing city on this amazing planet. He couldn't have imagined any of this a year ago. His communication device buzzed with messages from hybrids all over the galaxy who had seen his speech. They were reaching out to ask for help, offer support, and tell their stories. The group he had just helped start would be busy for years, maybe even decades, helping all of these people find safety and acceptance. But right now, in this quiet moment, all Cale could feel was thankfulness. Thankful to the Taylor family for saving him. He was thankful for the friends who had been there for him. Thankful for all the people on Earth who thought one hybrid was worth fighting for. And thankful for a second chance at life, a chance to be important, and a chance to change things. He looked up at the stars, the same ones he had seen from Station Vex 7 when he was sad and alone. Now they looked different. They no longer looked like a cold, unfriendly galaxy. They stood for what could be. They stood for hope. Cale smiled. His golden eyes shone with the lights of the city below and the stars above. He had finally found his place. He was back home.